Our next presenter is Alan Gordon. So welcome, Alan Gordon, and take it away.
Thank you. Reefer containers for the economy, huh? Let me just get this just so. Can you hear me all right? I can't see. Oh, yes. Yes, please. Thanks. Good evening. I'm a medical cannabis activist with a bee in my bonnet. That's because 72% of U.S. and Canadian doctors will recommend medical cannabis, but Bermuda's government and medical establishment are trailing way behind, tricked by a slick pack of corporate lies. Around the world, laws are changing and science is evolving. 72% of North American physicians surveyed said they would recommend medical cannabis. In Bermuda, though, doctors have been trained for years with government funds and a pharmaceutical company's self-serving input to reject cannabis, and patients suffer. Did it switch? Uh-oh. Our government relies on neutral medical opinion, right? The experts advising government were trained by government to unconsciously ignore pro-cannabis studies and misassign causation of associated illnesses. This doctor training was paid for by Public Safety Ministry under both parties. Pre-biased Bermudian doctors see anti-cannabis studies, think, I was right, and never look at conflicting studies. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Brain damage, schizophrenia, male breasts, violence, and lung cancer are absurdly still cited as dangers of cannabis. There is no scientific proof that cannabis increases risk of any illness. What studies do show is increased association between cannabis and some ailments, which could just as easily be, and often is, self-medication. Later you'll hear from a doctor who says it right. Cannabis could increase the risk of. The strange general local medical opinion forms one of government's main excuses for banning this medicine. Patients, those still alive that is, are ticked off because they were told they could apply for a license. They spent time and money applying, and then they were told that the program was closed. So why the anti-cannabis bias fed from politicians to doctors and back to the politicians? As it happens, some of the MPs who could be helping, but who aren't helping, are real hypocrites. Some MPs have been open and honest about their past cannabis use. This one caused all Bermuda to collectively suck our teeth over his use of cannabis on an infant, only to have top world experts weigh in and say he might have been right. Cannabis has penetrated into the businesses and families of a shockingly high number of MPs and ministers on both sides of the aisle. The most upstanding, straight-laced, and dedicated Bermudian public servants have suffered this, often through no fault of their own. Listen, do-da-do, do you want to know a secret? Do-da-do, do you promise not to tell? The United States first offense forgiveness laws don't even trip up their own stop list. We ought to use that model for our own people. Closer, do-da-do, let me whisper in your ear. Ooh-ah-ooh, say the words you want to hear. Gonna tell the TV news. Ooh. With that many MPs who we know have suffered cannabis policy's impact on family and business, there must be more MPs that we don't know of. Maybe this hard-ass policy is a case of he who doth protest too much. As a patient's representative and shield, I feel the frustration. The doublespeak we're hearing is Orwellian. This isn't a philosophical debate. People's lives are on the line, and human health and comfort. We're locked in an ongoing legal battle. One patient sued, and he's got a good case. Patients seek licenses and unbiased assessment of their applications for those licenses. The doublespeak and deceptions may get certain ministers disqualified by the courts. Patients and I cannot believe these politicians are even pretending to be neutral judges, the way they've spoken and behaved in public. So we should start outing them and their dope-smoking kids, right? In the media, right? No way, Jose. We're asking to be treated with dignity, compassion, and privacy that patients deserve, and so we will grant that in return. There are other ways to get what we need and what we were promised by the Premier. We start by praying to Almighty God that our country's leaders grow more wise and compassionate. We want them to suspect causation not only with harms associated with cannabis, but also with the good things associated with it where it's been made lawful. We're also going to retrain the island's doctors. They need to know that the opiate painkiller industry is the primary funder of anti-cannabis studies and propaganda. These doctors need to stop assuming harms associated with cannabis are caused by it. If there are holdout doctors who just won't get the message, we're going to train ourselves to deal with them. If some doctor hates cannabis medicine blindly, but doesn't know anything about it, we will not give them any of our medical business, cannabis or not. None of it. These patients are out of time. Some have already died waiting in unnecessary pain. The next step will not be a polite march, but several sit-ins. Overwhelming public support versus government stonewalling means it's going to get tougher before it gets nicer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions?
So is the issue that you want ultimately for the medical marijuana to be covered under the insurance, or why can't people just smoke weed in their own home? You know, is that the issue that is it a matter of getting it insured?
Insurance would be nice, but that's far down the line. Right now, we're just talking about people not having to risk criminal prosecution and the consequences of that, not having to risk buying cannabis from a street dealer under those conditions, and frankly not having to pay the outrageous prices born of prohibition that are really 10 times higher than what we see in the U.S.
$1,000 an ounce for high-grade marijuana in Bermuda right now.
We got a follow-up, yes.
Are you talking about smoking? Are all conditions that need medical marijuana about smoking it, or I understood that it comes in pill form and that there are other forms that it comes in tea or whatever?
Great question. It was about, is smoking marijuana the way to do medical cannabis? Some conditions, that is actually a better way to use it than taking it any other way. Other conditions, no. Some U.S. states require that it be smoked. Other U.S. states ban that it be smoked, and it's something that's being settled. A lot of we just assume that smoking is harmful for the lungs, but if you look at somebody with asthma, that's about the best medicine they could get in them, and the best way for them to get it in them, believe it or not, ironically, is smoking it. And we've seen studies now, long-term studies, people that smoke cannabis heavily for 30 years have a slightly lower risk of lung cancer than people who smoke nothing at all. And that from the U.S.'s top cannabis lung health specialist, really the world's top cannabis lung health specialist. So great question. Any others? Oh. Heavy.
I'm one of the first rascals in Bermuda. You understand? I'm white. I grew up in a black neighborhood with a lot of black immigrants. You understand? Old King, we got as youths, and we used to lick chalice. You right? We used to have a patch, used to hurl an ounce. When I used to inhale, you couldn't see me when I exhale. I'm talking when I was 13, 14, and 15. I'm not saying using that young is good, but my lungs at 60 almost, there's nothing wrong with me. Nothing. I could go run down the road tomorrow and ain't run for days, and I could run.
Sure didn't make you pretty.
My daddy was my age from drinking scotch and smoking camels with no filters. He's dying at my age. I'm telling you the truth, he told me one minute is about 58, something I'm going to be around much longer.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Okay.